So, okay, we all use Linux, Unix, even Windows, and all of them have the concept of various commands that you can pipe to each other. And the Unix philosophy is this toolkit of components that all do one thing, they do it well, and then you piece them all together. So, of course, which is the operating system that has brought this concept to its natural fruition to where it could possibly go to? That is, of course, Windows. And I'm now going to run away quickly through the back entrance before you all kill me, but let's have a look at some of the things that the Unix pipeline, I think, could do a little bit better. So, for example, we've got the ls command. We can pipe it to a command that filters the output, grepping for the letters foo, and then runs the word count command of it. That's all very nice, but it's textual. It's basically based on a stream of output stuff that is just text. So, okay, we can do complicated stuff with this. We've got awk, we've got cut, we've got Perl, handily enough. But some of the stuff you have to do with it isn't actually that fun. So, okay, let's say we've got a command that's got a header, so we get rid of the top 4 lines of the header. It's got a footer. Let's get rid of those 4 lines. Let's sort by the characters in a certain set of columns. And it's all fairly yucky. It's not, in fact, enlightened or modern in any way, really. So, what I'd really like would be a semantic pipeline, and PowerShell in the latest versions of Microsoft Windows actually gives us that. You have, instead of ls giving you a string which happens to contain a file name and a file size and so on, it'll give you a whole list of file objects, and the next command can do something with that. It can sort by all the objects of a certain size, tell you their full path, and so on. And I don't understand why people aren't wetting themselves with excitement about PowerShell, because it's really genuinely quite exciting. It's also very Unixy, so it's Unixy and it's semantic and it's exciting. No one really talks about it, and I think it's basically because, well, we don't like Microsoft, and so, well, what good could possibly come out of it? But of course we do have Perl, and if Microsoft can write PowerShell, why can't we do it in Perl? So we've got YAML, for example. We could serialize objects in any way, but I'm looking at YAML at the moment. So here's a very stupid command which uses path class, which is a way of creating objects representing files, takes in a list of file names and returns the YAML coded object for each of the files. So, for example, running it on star.pl in my directory that I was working on the train, I got that output. And as you can see here, we've encoded these objects with the class name path class file. So when we read them back in again, we can inflate them and do exciting stuff with them. So we could read it by basically doing the same thing in reverse. We use YAML again, we read the stuff, and then we can call nice commands like base name and stat size and so on the output. And doing that gives this not particularly pleasant output, but hey, it's just a proof of concept for the moment. So obviously we could do things like using number bytes human, we could use text reform, we could write our own libraries to make the pretty printing of the semantic commands nice and convenient later on. There's a big problem with what I talked about, where basically outputting a massive YAML stream, reading a massive YAML stream, and that's ignoring one of the major advantages of the Unix pipe system, which is that it's all streaming. Exactly. So you can produce a file, and as you're producing the file, the next command of the chain is reading from it. So we can do that with YAML as well. In fact, there's already a module called YAML.io that does incremental reading and writing of files. But it uses an old version of the YAML modules rather than YAML-SIC or YAML-XS. So I guess I could have patched it, but I ended up writing my own, which is basically, that's a closure that reads part of a YAML document. If it finds that the next one started, then it keeps it for next time. I won't go into the details because it's a bit much. So, for the future, to make this look really pretty, we could use Moose, which would give us this set of objects that we can then wrap and stream and pass to each other and do exciting things with. Now, one of the things about PowerShell is it's got .NET behind it, which is, whether you like it or not, is a fairly complete, well thought out object model and enterprise stack. So again, we've got that in Perl. Let's make it look nice. Let's present it in a nice way. We can use appcmd, which is a Moose way of writing these command line tools. and it's got all kinds of nice things like help documents and so on done fairly easily. Having said that, sorry, can I finish off?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You're a gentleman. I'd have rehearsed if I had another 5 minutes on the train. Yeah, so that makes things nice. I say it makes things nice. I struggled with it for about 2 hours, failing to get it to do anything at all. But maybe somebody cleverer than me would find it nicer, and I will eventually get my head around it. Obviously, we're using Moose. We're using lots of objects. They take ages to start up. And that's not really nice when you're piping things with lots of little tools. So let's use pperl, and we can have one persistent Perl server running all of these little scriptlets for us. And here's one example which I think is quite cool, which is, okay, dbix class is an important Perl module. We could actually use that with semantic objects. So we could have a from command which creates the result set, pipe it to a where command which filters that result set, and then a select command which actually returns the results. Obviously that's going to be completely insane if we're using the piping module, because we'd get the whole table, pipe it down the line, and then have to filter it in Perl space, which is crazy. So actually, these pipes don't anymore have to actually send data and read data. They can just send meta information about the data that they could have sent. So we could actually have the select call being done only there, and header information being sent in between, and this dbix class result object being created but never actually produced until the very last moment, which I think is quite cool. So similarly, the commands further up the pipeline can actually determine how they're going to be output. So if you have a command that has a header and footer, and then you pass it to grep, for example, that restricts the information, you can still have your header and your footer underneath it, which I think is one of the things that I don't like when trying to compose Unix pipelines, that you have to kind of, you've got ls that does a nice sort of summary at the bottom, oh, but you can't have it because you wanted to do something clever with the output. Okay, that's the details. So basically, this is all complete vaporware. I think it's quite cool, and I think it's going to work, and I've actually submitted a talk on this for the Italian Perl workshop in October, so conference-driven development. So hopefully there'll be something by October. And any questions?